Hello everyone and welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to prepare cream cheese flour tortillas. We're going to need all-purpose flour, 1 cup of warm milk, 4 ounces of cream cheese, and 1 teaspoon of salt. We're going to start by adding the flour into the bowl. I like to use this bowl because it has the rubber bottom. It also comes with a handy lid that you can use to cover the dough when it's resting. And this way you don't have to waste plastic. So we're gonna put this aside and we're gonna measure 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Okay, measure 3 cups exactly. Here's 1. 2. And if you want to use the entire block of cream cheese, you can use 6 cups of flour and just double the salt. Just double up on the ingredients. And 3. Cover this up. And then I'm going to mix in the salt. I don't like to use baking powder, but if you want to use baking powder, you can add the baking powder. But I find that it really doesn't need the baking powder because it works fine just without it. We're going to mix the salt into the flour. Okay. Now the cream cheese is already at room temperature. I'm just going to cut it in half. Put that over there. And we're going to take half of the cream cheese and we're going to mix it in with the flour. We're going to break down the cream cheese until it's well incorporated with the flour. And just try to break it down as much as you can until it has a nice crumbly texture. And once that's broken down, we're going to add the warm milk. The milk does need to be warm because that's what's going to help break down the cream cheese. Just make sure it's not too hot to where it's going to burn your hands. And for the 3 cups of flour, I'm going to use exactly 1 cup of milk. Now, depending on where you live or depending on the flour that you use, you may need to use more milk or maybe less milk. Just add it a little bit at a time until it comes together. But usually I just add exactly 1 cup of milk. All right, now that it's well broken down, I'm gonna start to add the milk a little bit at a time. I'm gonna add half of it first, and then I'm gonna mix it, and then I'll add the rest. Let's add all of it. And we're just gonna mix for a good 5 minutes or until everything comes together. And this feels very sticky. Once it's ready, the flour is gonna not stick as much to the side of the bowl or to your hands. You wanna get in there and work it with your hands so you can feel the texture of the flour. You can also make it in a stand-up mixer. It works just as good, but you know, I like to get my hands dirty and really get my hands in there. Now, if you have to, you can transfer it to a lightly floured working surface to continue to mix it. And see how sticky that is? We're gonna continue to knead it until it comes together. I did not add any flour to the surface. This is probably the most important part to get your tortillas nice and perfect, the mixing part, because you want your dough to be nice and soft and smooth before you set it down to rest. Invest that time in your kneading time because that is the most important part. And if this is your first time making tortillas, they might not come out perfectly in a circle, which is perfectly fine too because that comes with practice. Until it's nice and until it has a little bit of elasticity. Until it has a little bit of elasticity. It's a little,
it's kind of like elastic.
It's a little bit of elastic feel, elasticity feel, a little bit, so until it's a little bit stretchy.
Stretchy
there,
feel.
stretchy feel.
Stretchy feel.
Or elasticity. I don't know if I'm saying that right. So when you're using a silicone mat like this one, make sure the counter is nice and clean, free of debris, otherwise it is gonna unstick and it's not gonna stay still like it just happened. I put it on the counter where there was a little bit of flour underneath so it's not sticking completely to the counter. All right, so now we're just gonna let it rest. Just gonna place it in the bowl and we're gonna let it rest for about 20 minutes.
Once our dough is done resting, we're gonna separate the dough into equal sized rounds, or as equal as possible. If you need to, you can also use a small kitchen scale to make them as equal as possible. I usually just do it by hand. To place our rounds, I'm going to use a large cookie sheet. But before we place the rounds on the cookie sheet, I'm going to lightly flour the bottom of the cookie sheet. Once we're done filling the cookie sheet, I'm going to lightly flour the top with a little bit of flour. Then I'm going to cover it with a clean kitchen towel. This is going to keep the flour from getting dry as we prepare the tortillas. Before you begin to shape your first tortilla, heat up your comal over medium heat. And before you place the tortilla, test it to see if it's warm enough. A great way to do that is by splashing a very small amount of water over the comal or the griddle. If the water sizzles, that means the comal is nice and hot and ready to go. Place your tortilla on the comal and cook for 10 to 15 seconds on the first side, or until you start to see bubbles like this form. Flip it over and cook for 25 to 30 seconds on the second side. Flip it once again. You can press down with your hand, but I don't like to burn my hands. I like to use a spatula, which is perfectly okay. Lightly press down on the tortilla until you start to see large bubbles like this form. At this point, your tortilla is ready. Remove it from the comal and place it in a clean kitchen towel to keep them warm while we prepare the rest of the tortillas.
With the amount of ingredients we used, we made a little bit over 1 dozen tortillas. And look how nice and soft these came out. These do have a little bit of different flavor than the buttery flour tortillas, but they're just as delicious. And now they're ready to enjoy with your favorite dishes, or enjoy it with a little bit of butter just by itself. Now, to keep these tortillas nice and soft, once they're still warm, you want to put them in a plastic storage bag like this one. This is going to keep your tortillas soft and it's going to keep them from getting hard. They fit perfectly in a storage size Ziploc bag. Once they completely cool down, you can transfer them to the refrigerator and they'll stay nice and soft for up to a week. And when you heat them up, they'll still be nice and soft for you to enjoy. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in our next video with a different recipe.